Okay, in this lesson, I am going to show you the equation of a line in slope-intercept form. So let's take a look at an example. We have y equals mx plus b, which is the equation for slope-intercept form, where x and y are your domain and range. M is called your slope, and then your b is your y-intercept. Your y-intercept is where the function or the line crosses the y-axis. And then your slope is the angle of your line. So the best way to explain this is through an example. Let's suppose we have the equation y equals 2x plus 1. Okay, so the way to graph this is start with the y-intercept. In this case, the y-intercept is 1. And that represents the point on the y-axis where the function crosses it. So we're going to put a dot at 1, like this. Okay, so let me label these 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 1, negative 2, negative 3. Okay, and then your slope is 2, which is your m. Okay, right here. This is your m. And a slope of 2 means 2 over 1. And you're going to rise 2 places, and then you're going to run 1 place. Since this is a positive slope, you're going to rise and then run to the right. So we start from the y-intercept, okay, and we already marked that on the graph, and we're going to go up 2 places. So that's going to be 1, 2, and then we're going to run to the right 1 place, and that takes us right here. Okay, if you rise and run to the right, that means you can also decrease or drop and run to the left. So in this case, starting at the y-intercept, we're going to go down two positions, 1, 2, and then we're going to run to the left 1 position. That lands us right here. Okay, so that means the line looks like this. Okay, let's do another example. So we're going to do one where the slope is a negative slope. So let's say we have y equals negative x plus 1. Okay, so we always start with the y-intercept. Okay, this is your y-intercept, and that's the point where it crosses the y-axis. So we're going to put a dot there, right there. Got it in blue. Okay, now the coefficient in front of the x is a negative 1. So this means that our slope is negative 1 over 1. Okay, when you have a negative slope, when you rise, you run to the left. For a positive slope, you rise and run to the right. For a negative slope, you rise and run to the left. Okay, so let's start at the y-intercept. And we're going to rise one position, and then we're going to run to the left one position, and that lands us right here. The opposite is also true. You're going to drop one position and then run to the right one position. So we're going to drop one and then run to the right one position. And what you get is a graph that looks like this. Okay? Now, let's take a look at another example. Let's suppose that our equation looks like this. Y equals 2/3 x minus 1. Okay? The way we do this is exactly the same as the first two examples. So we take a look at our y-intercept, and we find that our y-intercept is -1. Okay, so we're going to start at -1, which is right here. Okay. It probably helps to label the graphs. Now, we look at the slope, and it is 2/3, which means we're going to rise 2 positions and then run to the right 3 positions, because it is a positive number. Therefore, it's a positive slope. Okay, so starting at the y-intercept, where we just marked it with the blue dot, we're going to move up 2 positions, 1, 2, and then go to the right 3 positions, 1, 2, 3. Okay, and then the opposite is true. We're going to drop 2 positions, 1, 2, and then run to the left 3 positions, 1, 2, 3. Okay, and when we connect the dots, it will look like this. And there we have it. Okay, so up to this point, it's been fairly straightforward in that you're given an equation in slope-intercept form. Okay, slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. It's called slope-intercept because you're given the slope, m, and you're also given the y-intercept, b, hence slope-intercept. But what happens if you're not given slope in a slope-intercept form? Let's take a look. Let's suppose you get an equation that looks like this. 2x plus y is equal to 2. Okay, this is called standard form. Okay, it's standard because x and y are on one side of the equation, and then everything else is on the other side of the equation. So when you have an equation like this, all we need to do is solve for y. Okay, so to get y alone on the left side of the equation, we have to move 2x to the other side of the equation. And we do that by subtracting both sides by 2x. So then what we get is y equals -2x plus 2. Okay? You notice that the y's remain the same, the 2's remain the same. Okay? All we did was subtracted 2x on both sides. Once we subtract 2x on the left side, the 2x disappear, and on the right side appears a -2x because we're subtracting 2x. Once we have this, now it's pretty straightforward. We have our y-intercept, which is 2, so we're going to plot that point at 2 on the y-axis. Okay? And then our slope is -2, which is equal to our rise over run. Okay, -2 is the same as -2 over 1. It is a negative slope, so we're going to rise and run to the left, not right, to the left, because it's negative. So if we plot our points, we're going to run up 2, 1, 2, and then we're going to run to the left one place, which puts us right there. Okay, and then the opposite is true. We're going to drop 2 places, 1, 2, and then this time we run to the right one place, puts us right here, and then our graph looks like this. Okay, so up to this point you've been given an equation, but what happens if you're not given an equation or you're given an incomplete equation? Okay, here's what I mean. Let's suppose that you are to find the equation of a line and graphing it if you're given the following. Y equals mx plus 2, and then the coordinate 1, 3. Okay, now you can't graph it using slope-intercept form because you don't know what m is, or the slope. Okay, but what we do know is what's given to us. And what is that? We know that this is our x and this is our y. So we can plug our x into the equation. So if we were to rewrite the equation, we get 3 is equal to m times 1 plus 2. Now we can solve for m to figure out what the slope is. So what we're going to do is subtract both sides by 2, and we get 1 is equal to m. Okay? We know the slope is 1, so now we're going to rewrite the equation, and we get y is equal to x plus 2. Okay? Now, all we have to do is to graph this equation. Just like before, we start with the y-intercept, and that is 2. Okay, this is our y-intercept. So we plot the point 2 right here on the graph, and the coefficient in front of x is 1, so the slope of 1 over 1 is equal to rise over run. So we're going to move up one position, and then go to the right one position. We get a point here, and then in the opposite direction we're going to drop one position and run to the left one position, which lands us right here, and then our graph will look like this. Okay, so you notice that I didn't complete the graph because we're going to be crossing the x-axis. Before we cross the x-axis, we need to know where it crosses the x-axis. Okay, so what do we know about every point on the x-axis? Every coordinate here tells us that when a line crosses the x-axis, the value of y is 0. Okay, here's what I mean. This point is 1, 0. Okay, this point is 2, 0. This point is 3, 0. Notice that every one of those points the y value or the range is 0. Okay? So we know that this line is going to cross somewhere in this area. Okay? And that value, that point, is going to have a 0 for y. Okay? So we know it's some point. We're going to call it P, comma 0. Okay? That's where it's going to cross the x-axis. So how do we find that point? Well, we can plug that information into the equation. Okay? We're going to plug this point into this equation. So then what we get is 0 for y is equal to, we don't know what x is, which is what we're going to solve for. So 0 equals x plus 2. Okay? If we solve for x, we need to subtract 2 from both sides, and we get x is equal to negative 2. That means the line crosses the x-axis at negative 2, comma 0. Okay? So we need to put a dot right here, negative 2, comma 0, and then continue drawing the line. Okay? Not exactly a straight line, but you get the idea. So hopefully that made sense to you. Okay? Let's try another problem. Let's suppose we're given 2 points. 1, comma 0, and 3, comma 2. Okay? And we need to find the equation of this line. Okay? How do we do this? So first, we need to find the slope from these two lines. Okay? The slope, we know, is equal to m. And m represents y2 minus y1 over x2 over x1. Okay? This is really the change in y over the change in x. This triangle sign represents the word change, or delta. It's a Greek symbol for the letter D, or delta, okay, which represents change. If you are given 2 points, then we know that these are x1, y1, and this is x2, y2. Okay, so we've plugged those values into the equation, then we get m is equal to y2, which is 2, minus, and then y1 is 0, over x2, which is 3, minus x1, which is 1. Okay, now solving for m, we get 2 over 2, which is equal to 1. Okay, so now we know what m is, but we don't know what b is, right? We need to solve for the equation y equals mx plus b. For the equation of a line, we have m, okay, we got this. Now we just need to solve for this. Now, how do we solve for that? We know that any line that crosses the y-axis, the x value or the domain is always 0, right? Here's what I mean. This point is 0, 1. This point is 0, 2. And this point is 0, 3. Notice that all of the x values are zeros. Okay? 0, 0. So we know that wherever this line crosses the x or the y-axis, the x value is always going to be 0. So we can write this equation with our m value, y equals, it's going to be 1x because our m is 1 plus b. Okay. Then we're going to add one of these points. Let's take 1, 0 and plug it in. Our y for 1, 0 is 0, and our x value is 1 plus b. And then when we solve for b, we need to subtract both sides by 1, and we get b is equal to -1. So now that we know that our equation is y is equal to x minus 1. Okay? So now that you have that, we can easily graph this line. Okay? We know that our y-intercept is -1. So we're going to put a dot at -1 on the y-axis. And we know that our slope is 1 over 1. And we're going to do our rise over run. Okay, so starting from the blue dot that we just added, we're going to rise one position up, and then we're going to run to the right because it's a positive slope. Okay, put a dot there, and then the opposite, we'll go drop one position and then run to the left one position, put a dot there. Okay, once we have that, then our graph looks like this. Okay, so now to summarize this lesson, you've learned the equation of a line in slope-intercept form. You know how to graph the line with a positive slope and a negative slope. You also learn the equation of a line in standard form. And to graph that line, you need to convert the standard form into slope-intercept form. And to do that, you solve for y. You also learn to identify the equation of a line when you're given an incomplete equation and 1 point. And you also learn how to find the equation of a line when you're only given 2 points. Okay, there's a lot of information in this lesson. If any of this did not make sense to you or was not clear, please go back to the beginning of the lesson and re-listen to it. Thank you.